Welcome to the PNC Bank Studio. I'm Meredith Foreman, joined by our Patriots beat writer Zach Cox. And Zach, the Patriots were in first place in the AFC before their bye week, and since they've come back, they've lost their last two straight games. What do you think is causing this slump, or is it just a matter of playing teams that are better than them?
It's a number of factors. I think the defense surely has played into that. They have not looked nearly as formidable defensively as they did during that 7-game win streak. They gave up over 200 rushing yards against the Colts 2 weeks ago. They were really shredded by Josh Allen on Sunday in that loss to the Bills. So you're not seeing the same kind of playmaking, swarming defense that you saw for much of this season. And then offensively, I think it hasn't helped them that they've fallen behind early in both of these games. They trailed 20-0 against the Colts. They trailed 17-7 against the Bills. The way this offense is structured, they're not really built to come back from deficits like that. And we haven't seen Mac Jones, even though he has led the Patriots in comeback bids in both of these games, he hasn't been able to overcome a deficit like that in his NFL career. So I think it's kind of a confluence of factors, just a lot of things currently going wrong for the Patriots.
Yeah, and Mac Jones hasn't really looked the same the past couple of weeks either. Is this cause for concern or growing pains?
I think it's definitely a little bit of a cause for concern. I don't know if I would be panicking over it or anything, and I'm not making any kind of sweeping judgments about his NFL career at this point, but he just hasn't looked as accurate in the last couple of weeks. He's making some less poised decisions than we saw him make earlier in the year. He's been less careful with the ball. He's thrown 3 interceptions in the last 2 games, could have thrown another one on a deep ball to N'Keal Harry on Sunday. He really hasn't looked like the same kind of crisp quarterback that he did for much of the season. Maybe the cold has played some sort of factor in that. He has not looked as good in cold weather games, but he also played against the Colts in a dome 2 weeks ago and didn't look very good for a long stretch of that game either. So it raises the concern of whether he's kind of hitting the metaphorical rookie wall. It's 17 or 16 games into a season now. He also had the preseason. He's not used to this long of a season. He's not used to these conditions. Again, not panicking or anything, but he certainly has not looked like the same passer over these last couple of weeks than he did earlier in the year.
The weather and cold conditions are a really good point because I feel like not a lot of people have really discussed that enough when they're talking about his drop in performance. But looking ahead to Sunday with the Jaguars coming to town, a lot of people are saying that this game is going to be a cakewalk based on how the Jags have played so far this season. But what do you think the Jags will do to challenge the Pats this weekend?
It shouldn't be much. I mean, this is a game that the Patriots should win easily. They should win handily. The Jacksonville Jaguars fired their head coach. They just lost one of their best players, James Robinson. They're running back to a season-ending injury. Trevor Lawrence really has not played well so far this season. The overall talent on that team is not very high, and they're dealing with a rash of COVID cases. They've placed close to a dozen guys on the COVID list this week. The Patriots, the last line that I saw was about 16.5. They're about 16.5 point favorites in this game. I think that sounds about right. This is the ideal get right game for the Patriots. This is like when they came off their loss to the Cowboys in week 6 and got to play the New York Jets the next week. It's the same kind of situation. And the Patriots really need a bounce back. They really need a get right game because week 18, they've got to go to Miami. They're 2-6 in their last 8 games in Miami. And that could wind up being a game that they end up needing to win to get into the playoffs. I think they really need a resounding performance this week, and they've got to look a lot more like the Patriots we saw in November and early December, and not like the team we've seen of late.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Zach, and happy almost New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
PNC Bank, helping to make banking easier.